Okay, so this is part 2 of the tutorial 1 on open music basic introduction. I was about to say something about this little X that you see here in the object. That means that this particular object is currently locked, meaning the value of it is locked. That's because it can be useful if you're going to be changing some of these things and you like the object to just keep the value that's in there. So if you want to reevaluate it, you're going to need to select it, press B, which is going to unlock it. And now if you were to change something here, you could reevaluate it. So what I wanted to do, and let's go back to our C triad. Oops. So I go there, evaluate it. Okay, there's a C triad. Everything works well. So one of the things you could do very easily is create multiple transpositions of this chord. So let's say we want to have a chord, in this case a C triad, and then we want to transpose it a whole tone up and then another whole tone up. So 2 whole tones up. So let's go ahead and write 200 here. So 200 in MIDI cent values is a whole step. And so what we're going to need, and now let's also do one more here, that's 400. That's one of many ways we could do this. So we now have a value of a whole step, value of 2 whole steps. So what we want to do is we want to take this list, we want to add this number to each element of this list, and then output the result into a chord object and do the same thing with this. So we're going to use this as a starting point for both. We're going to double click here, we're going to write OM plus. OM plus. That is an object called, of course, OM plus, which is essentially just an addition object, and it'll have 2 inlets, one for each element of the addition. So we'll put the list onto the left out inlet, and the value we want to add to each element of the list into the left inlet. And then what we could do is we could either type chord, or we could, let me try another way, we could select this, we could press option and then hold it down, click, drag, and we could copy the object. See how that has the same value, but we don't need to worry about that. Then we drag the outlet of plus onto here. So if I evaluate this, I now get a D. You can hear it. Here's a C triad. That didn't work. There we go. D major. And you can see it here. Now, if you see these funky ledger lines, don't worry about it. That's just what happens. Okay. By the way, you might have noticed that these are all quarter notes. That's just because that's what the default look is. These are not neither one of these objects, the node object, the chord object, and the next object we're going to look at, which is chord seek, don't display rhythmic values. There's separate objects for that. Okay. So this is just for you to see pitches, although they do recognize durations, which then can be transformed into actual rhythmic values, as we'll see later. So there's our first transposition. We're going to select this, option, click, drag, and then we're going to need another addition, so we can copy that one. And then we're going to take this, the same list, put it here, put 400 in here, because we want this one to be transposed by another 2 whole steps compared to the beginning. Now, another thing we could have done, of course, is to take this list, go through here, transpose it by 100, by a whole step, and then take this and transpose that by 200. It would have gotten the same result, obviously. So I was going to say the patch chords are kind of fussy in open music. They're not nearly as smooth and crisp and all curvy looking as Maximus P. But one of the things you can do, which is kind of nice, is you can select the patch chord and you can press C, and you can go through a whole bunch of, if you keep pressing C, a whole bunch of different colors that you could pick. So if you wanted to organize your patch a little bit better, you could do that. Maybe put the same color for everything that comes out of that. And I don't know, here you might want to do this. Here's green for the value that goes in, and maybe blue for this. Okay, much better. Okay, Excellent. So now, of course, this is not going to be that useful because these are all single things. What we might want to do is combine all of these into one larger list. So what we'll do for that is use an object called list. Now, what we're going to need to do here is we're going to press shift and then the greater than symbol together. We'll press it shift, we'll hold shift down, we'll press greater than as many times as we want, as we have lists going in. Does that make sense? I hope so. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the outlet that corresponds to the MIDI sent value, because that's what we're looking for right now. We're not interested in the durations or any of that. So we're just going to deal with this kind of list, just MIDI sense. So we'll go here. Okay, and now I'm going to introduce you to the Lisp listener. If you go to Windows, Lisp listener, this object here is extremely helpful. It allows you to see what's happening in the steps that are in between. So in other words, this is just a Lisp editor. You could this is what the Wikipedia was referring to when they said that you could just use this to do regular Lisp functions. So you could just type code in here and everything would work just fine. You wouldn't have to worry about any of these objects. So for example, if I go here to the plus sign and I evaluate it, you'll see that you see this, the result of this operation. 6,000 plus 200, 6,200, 6,400 plus 200, 6,400, 6,700 plus 200, 6,900. So I did this so that I could look at the result of this. So what we get is exactly what we need, which is a list of lists. So that means that I have 3 of those, because now this is contained into this. This plus 200 is contained into this chord object. This plus 400 is contained into this. Or in other words, this list, that list, 62, that list. They're all contained into each. So what I need is an object that'll allow me to view these 3 chords as, or interpret them as separate entities, but it will allow me to put several of them in a row. And that object is, double click, chord hyphen SEQ. So once again, I'm going to select it. I'm going to press M so that I can see what's in it. And I'm going to expand it a little bit. And now, if I connect the outlet of Lisp, the Lisp list here, and I evaluate it, I'll get the 3 chords in a row. Now, this is the way you want to do it, because now, if I double click here, you'll see that the chords are 3 separate entities. You could think of this as a list, and then this is a list, and then this is a list. But the combination of the list has to have its own parenthesis level. So that's what that is right here. So there's a larger parentheses, and inside there's one list. I could maybe do this. List number 2, list number 3. Okay, excellent. So here's where if you read a little bit of a book on Lisp, a little bit of that book that we were talking about, this will make a lot more sense, because this is essentially just how the language works. Okay, it's just a syntax. Excellent. So when we go here, let's double click it, let's play it. Oops, sorry. Let's press stop first. Beautiful. Okay, so you might wonder, well, why do I need to do all this? This took a long time just for me to transpose a simple triad, a step up. Why do I need Open Music to do that? Well, the truth is you don't. But here is where this might come in handy. Let's say that I have a much bigger chord. Let's say that I have 7,000, 7,100, 7,200. This is where I have no idea what any of these are anymore. Doesn't matter. 8,000. Okay. Now, if I needed to transpose a whole bunch of these in a row, this would happen a lot more quickly, right? So there's my, right? And even better, if one of these pitches is let's say, a quarter tone sharp, and maybe one of them is 2 quarter tone sharps, then of course the transposition now becomes a bit more complicated. So I'm evaluating these all together, but I don't individually, but we don't need to do that. So now, here we go. In a split second, I've transposed these. Awesome. All right, excellent. So this is pretty much all I wanted to talk about. So the main 3 objects we covered are note for individual pitches, the chord object, which recognizes a list of several elements, that understands as a chord, and lastly the chord seek object. Okay, so I'll see you in the next tutorial where we're going to talk about transposition.